Welcome back. My name is Irvin, also known as Koboman. Today we continue with our Intune training series. There is always something new to learn when it comes to Intune, and in the couple of previous videos we learned some basics, to be honest. Device preparation policy is the next thing we should concentrate on, and this is going to be very important to make sure that our devices are managed properly. We also have to do some customized restrictions, customized installations, and making sure that things make sense when it comes to the whole setup of the Intune. I mean, after all, this is something super important for your company. Before we begin, please do me a favor, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for this channel. The reason I'm asking is because YouTube's kind of being harsh on my channel when it comes to the promotion, when it comes to views and such. And normally this type of video, I would actually sell this as a class, but in this video, I wanted to decide and give it for free, just like I've done with the 3 previous videos that I've made specifically for Intune. All right, let's get it started with the introduction. This is Windows Autopilot for pre-provisioned deployment. And it says here, Windows Autopilot helps organizations easily provision new devices by using the pre-installed OEM images and drivers. This functionality lets end users get their devices business ready by using a simple process, meaning that instead of having to manually install operating system on every computer and drivers and etc., you can use or leverage OEM, original equipment manufacturer, to provide their own images and drivers, which when it comes down to it, it's Microsoft images, but they will help you get this done so that way it will simplify the process. So what happens here, and if you look at this image here, OEM will install Windows image and drivers. They would ship it to the end user, and the end user will end up with apps and settings and policies applied to their computer through Intune. And OEM will actually set this up so that those computers that they ship out will have these settings pre-installed. Continuing on, it says here, Windows Autopilot can also provide pre-provisioning service that helps partners or IT staff pre-provision a fully configured and business-ready Windows PC. So this is what I'm going to show you how to do in this video. I will show you how you can set it up so that the OEM, in this case, can do part of this work, meaning dealing with the images and even installing of the software and or configurations specific to your organization. So all of this stuff happens at the OEM before it even reaches you, your company, your business, your office, or end user. So this is what we're going to set up. From the end user's perspective, the Windows Autopilot user-driven experience is unchanged, meaning that they can't tell the difference when somebody receives a computer in the mail. Let's say they're working from home. All they have to do is log in and maybe go through a couple of settings that they simply can click through. But getting their devices to a fully provisioned state is faster. So this is the part of it where you, as an IT person that works for the company, you won't have to manually install images, drivers, or even applications, settings, and etc. This is all pre-provisioned and done by the OEM, and it's really cool. I will show you how it's done. So to make this happen, first thing we have to do is create 2 different groups that will allow us to manage this whole system. First is for OEMs. This group that we create from Microsoft Intune Admin Center, we can add a couple of accounts that will have access to this system. And this is something that will allow OEM to log in provisioning for any devices that we purchase from them. So it's basically giving OEM access to our system. So let's go ahead and select the groups from Intune Admin Center. Select a new group, and this will be a security group. And the group name, we'll just call it OEM Pre-Provision Access Account. I will use the same thing for the group description here. And it says Microsoft Entra roles can be assigned to the group. I will go ahead and say no. And it says here membership type, and we will say assigned because we will specify who will be part of this group. So in this case, we need to add members, and it says here no members selected. So what's going on here is that you will need a couple of different accounts, or whoever has the main account at the OEM. So let's say at Dell, we need to give them that type of access. And for that reason, we can go ahead and just create a new user if this is what you want to do. So I'll go ahead and go back to my admin, and just so we can keep it separate. So we're here in Intune, and we can go back to Entra, or in here, I'll go ahead and just create an account from here where it's just the main admin center. I will go ahead and add a user. I will call it Dell OEM. Same thing for the last name. This is just provisional. Dell OEM. Create a password. Okay. We will not give them any licenses or anything like that. Okay. Next. Finish adding. So now we have login for Dell, so they can log into our system and manage our devices and do the pre-provisioning. So in this case, I may have to reset or refresh, I should say, but let me go ahead and see if it'll come up. There it is, Dell OEM. It's okay. That works. We will select that. So now this is the access we will provide to Dell OEM. Select create. All right. And then a new group that will allow us to manage these devices. It will also be a security group. And in this case, we will call it let's call it Intune Autopilot Preprovisioning. Preprovisioning account. Not account. I'm just going to leave it at this. No roles assigned. And it says here membership type, again, assigned, because in this case, we will go ahead and set up an owner. In this case, there is a service. If you search for Intune, there is a service which is actually an app that is installed by Microsoft that you have access to, and it's called Intune Provisioning Client. This will be installed, basically will let us do the provisioning. This is the setup, this is the system that will allow the bulk assignment of these devices and provisioning to our system. All right. Create. Now let's go ahead and set up our setup for the pre-provisioning. And this is done through our devices, Windows, and then go ahead and select on enrollment. Scroll down a little bit if you need to and select device preparation policies. Go ahead and select that. We will create a new policy. And this is just here explanation of introduction of what it does. We've kind of talked about that already. So I will go ahead and select next. Name, and we will call it Intune. You can name it whatever you want. Pre-provisioning. Reprovisioning? No. Intune pre-provision profile. Same thing for description. Again, you can call it whatever you want. This is you being organized. Here, we need to select a device group. And this is the second group that we've created. And we've called it Intune Autopilot Pre-Provisioning. So we will go ahead and set this. And it says here, select the Entra security group that will contain the Autopilot devices when they enroll. So this whole setup will contain them. And it says these policies, apps, and scripts intended for these devices should be assigned to this group either explicitly or implicitly through the group's own membership. And we will talk about that here. So this is just specifically for the devices. Select next. And we have our configuration setting here. We already know it's going to be user driven, meaning whenever they get the device, they will log into it and they will drive the process when it comes to the completion of the pre-provisioning. Deployment type, We can set it up as single user. This is the only option we have at this time. And we have join type. We got Microsoft Entra joined. That means that this user needs to be part of Microsoft Entra. So this can be either in a hybrid setup. Either way, you will have an Entra account. And a user account type, standard user. We can leave it at that. And then here it says out of the box experience settings. It says minutes allowed before showing installation errors. I would say about 30. Custom error message. If things don't work out, who do you contact? And here you can specify contact your organization support person for help or contact your IT support. And you can provide a number. Let's say the number is 555-555-5555. Let's say that's the number. You can put that in there. And it says here allows users to skip setup after multiple attempts. So what this does is allows users to continue to desktop if deployment fails. I will say no, because we want to make sure that we are managing these devices. And it says show links to diagnostic. I will go ahead and say no. They don't need to know this. And here we select apps that we want to deploy using this device profile policies. Go ahead and select add. Select the apps that you want to deploy. So in this case, and in previous videos, we had a couple of apps that we showed how to package and deploy. In this case, we will add 7-Zip, Google Chrome, and Microsoft 365 apps. And I'll go ahead and add this when it says Microsoft Edge for Windows. Go ahead and select save. So all of these apps will be automatically installed as soon as the device is pre-provisioned. And we can set up scripts down here. So if you want to set up post-logon scripts, PowerShell scripts, they can be also added in here. So if you select add, you can locate your script and you can go ahead and deploy it along with this pre-provisioning setup of it. So what could this be? Let's say you want to map some network drives that you're still using in your company. You can set a PowerShell script to run after they log into the computer for the first time, or anything else. You can set up custom installation, custom settings, custom all kinds of things. This is just PowerShell script that you can set up. And if you have that, go ahead and select that. Scope tags, we can go ahead and skip this. This is just for tagging, and it says here default role scope tag. This will exist by default in all Intune entities whenever user defines role scope tag is not tagged. So this is fine. This is just if you want to be more organized. So we'll go ahead and skip that here for now to simplify it. And here we have assignments. Here we will assign this to, meaning who is going to control this, right? And remember, we created that OEM provisioning access account. And here it is. We will go ahead and select this. All right. So this is basically will give them ability to log in under that account that we've created. The second part here is to add those apps to the groups that we created, to the device group that we've created. So we have to make sure that we kind of do this step here as well to make sure that we are specifically using those apps to deploy. I know we already selected it there, but that was for our configuration part of it. But we have to make sure that our apps are also assigned to those groups. So go ahead and select on apps under Microsoft Intune Admin Center. Locate your apps. In this case, mine is under Windows. And let's see here. Here's our 7-Zip. Go ahead and go to properties of your app. Scroll all the way down where you can see assignments. Go ahead and select edit. And from our previous video, you can see that we have assigned it to all devices. In this case, I'll go ahead and remove this and specify to use the pre-provisioned devices. So I went and deleted that one, and I will go ahead and add it to the group that I've specifically created for this. So I'll select add group, and I will find our Intune devices here, pre-provisioning. Here it is. Here's the group I want. Go ahead and select that. Review and save. Okay. Same thing for the other ones that we have. So Windows apps, Chrome, properties, all the way down to edit. I will remove the one that's on here because we don't want to add it to all devices. Now we're just controlling the pre-provisioned devices. Same thing. Intune Autopilot provisioning group. Review and save. And I think the last one was our Microsoft 365 apps. I think I did Edge as well, but that's okay. We'll expedite this. Assignments. And I will remove this one that's on here. And again, add to the Microsoft Intune Autopilot provisioning group that we've created. Okay, save. So next thing we want to do is create a restriction on which devices can or cannot be enrolled. We obviously don't want every device to be enrolled. And this is kind of what we've set up in the previous video, where just to show an example on how this is done, we've allowed every device to enroll as long as you use your, company provided login, email, ID, and password. So let's go ahead and place this restriction. Let's go back to enrollment and select device platform restrictions. And by default, all users are, allowed, but let's go ahead and create a restriction on here. We will call it company owned assets, because this is what we want to allow only. We don't want to allow any other device to be enrolled. And here, obviously, we want MDM, mobile device management, to be allowed. Here you can set up a minimum and maximum range for the operating system version. And here it says personally owned devices, and we want to block this. This is the whole point of this setup here. We don't want to manage every device. We only want the ones that are specifically owned and managed by our company. So go ahead and select next. Again, scope tags. If you want to get organized, you can get into scope tags. Assignments group. So we will go ahead and add it to all users. And in this case, this restriction, because it's a restriction for all users, right? It's a restriction for all users. So everybody that's part of our company will have this restriction where they cannot enroll their personal device into the company's Intune management system. Simple as that, right? It's a restriction for all users. Okay, review and create. Go ahead and create. All right. So now that we've set up these restrictions, now we don't want personal devices to deploy or to start managing or anything like that. But how do we know which ones that we can manage? How is it that OEM or somebody who is assigned to provide this information, how can they tell the system to only install management on specific devices? Well, this is done through devices. So go ahead and select devices here and select enrollment. Do not go to Windows first and then select enrollment, because you won't see the option. So just generic devices overview and then select enrollment. And then here you will see an option says here corporate device identifier. Again, you will not be able to see this if you select Windows first. So it's before you select anything, under devices, select enrollment and go ahead and select add, and then select upload CSV file. And then in the drop down here, select the way we're going to modify our .csv, and then that would be by providing manufacturer, model, and serial number information for your devices. And it tells you here, selecting identifier type, as in manufacturer, model, and serial number. This is for Windows only. Means only devices matching this list will be defined as corporate owned. This means all other devices enrolling will be defined as personal or Windows in your tenant. And then here, if you want, this is a link if you want to learn more. So we need to upload a CSV file that contains information about the computers we are managing. So we need to get manufacturer of the computer. So let's say it's Dell. Then we already know it's Dell, right? And then we need to find out what the model is, and then followed by a serial number. So for those reasons, we need to create a CSV file, and you can do it many different ways. And here is just a notepad. So here it is. We need manufacturer, and it says here whatever the manufacturer is. So let's pretend that it is Dell, and then type in comma, and then type in the model of it, and let's say model number is, and I'm just making this up. I forget what some of the models are. And let's say I think there's a 3000 or something, comma, and then whatever the serial number is, which could be combinations of letters and numbers. And then you save it as a CSV. So you would go File, Save As, and then change this to be all files, and then name it, for example, new devices, and then type in .csv, select save, and then from here you can find that file that you just created. I think we saved it to our desktop, or maybe downloads, documents. No, actually under documents. Here it is. Select open, and then select add. And let's actually get this information, like actual good information. This is just made up stuff. And we'll get it for our virtual machine that I have running in the background. So here is our virtual machine. And back in the day, and this is disabled now, you can type in a command WMIC, I believe. And what this can give you is this information that you're looking for, including the serial number, model number, and the vendor name. But that is being depreciated. That no longer works. So you will need to use PowerShell, unless you already know this information. And in this case, let's say Dell is doing this. They will provide this information. And this can be done in many different ways. In, let's say, for example, that account that we've created, we call Dell OEM. If part of your agreement with Dell is that they would log in themselves and upload this, then you would have to give more permissions to that account, make them an Intune administrator, this and that. Or Dell can do basically the provisioning part, which we will show here shortly, where they go in and they get the things installed on it. And the rest of it is they don't necessarily have access to your Intune system, but they provide this information that we need to get. So that's including the information that we've just kind of talked about. And here are some commands that we can run in order to get this information. So this is just through PowerShell. So let's start with manufacturer, copy. I will go ahead and paste this in, and I will press enter. Here is the manufacturer of this virtual machine that it decided to name it. So I will go ahead and get this information and fill out my CSV with this information. All right. And then we need to get the vendor name. Then we need to get our model number, which in this case is VirtualBox. This is what it's called. So here it is under the side here. It says model. It's VirtualBox. So whatever it is for you. And then lastly, we need to get the serial number. Copy, paste, enter, and there is our serial number. So this is the information I need to fill out over there in order to make this working. And there is our serial number, so I went ahead and filled it out. I will go ahead and save it as, and I will just go ahead and call it VirtualBox PC .csv. Make sure you change it to all files here, .csv, and save. And now we'll go ahead and select that one, VirtualBox CSV. Go ahead and select add. And again, however your company decides to do this, if you want, in this case, let's say Dell, provide you this information, all you have to do is upload this CSV and they can do the provisioning on their end. So this part of it here is done. Now we are going to visit our virtual machine back. I will go ahead and reset it. And then after that, we should be able to go through the provisioning where it should automatically be able to detect that it's being provisioned And yeah, there you go. So because we are doing user-driven deployment here, we're not going to do any pre-provisioning. But for that, if you wanted to do, at this point, you would just press Windows key 5 times in order to get the pre-provisioning window. But because we are user-driven, user driving this experience, we will just go ahead and go through this process here where we get to a point where we select login to the work email address. And to get it set up, to get everything pre-installed, we will use our Dell OEM ID, login ID, and password to get this going. All right, so our required setup is complete now. Let's go ahead and select next and see what happens from here on out. We can certainly double check and circle back when it comes to this. Here are some more settings that we have to check. And again, if it's pre-provisioned, none of this stuff would even appear for the user, chances are. But again, this is user-driven setup, and this is why we have these. We can customize these. I'm just going to leave everything in default and select accept, so that user in this case can just log in at some point. So this device is being managed right now. You saw that we used Dell OEM login for this, and this is just one way of doing this. I mean, you can set it up where OEM doesn't even have the logins. They just do pre-provisioning of it. They will never see a login or anything like that. It really depends how you set it up for your company. Or you can simply send this computer to the user. User just logs in just like the Dell OEM did, and they'll be able to provide, they will be able to execute the user-driven installation of Intune as long as there is internet connection, of course. All right, let's quickly pop back in and see how it looks like on our devices end, and then we'll talk about some things that make sure that you have in place to make sure that this actually works for you. Otherwise, you may have issues. Here is what happened. So far, the device popped in, and it says it's in grace period, meaning that it's still installing stuff. Here's the stuff that we've kind of filled out in that restriction part of it, and to make sure that we are allowing this specific machine to install Intune. And here it is. Here's all the info that we have. Admittedly, I had to do some changing and I had to reset my virtual machine. So this number that you see here is kind of different from what I showed you earlier, because I had to reset the machine because you already had the previous Intune on it. So again, just make sure whenever you're installing everything here, if you go to enrollment and corporate device identifier, make sure that your identifiers are correct. Otherwise, you will have obviously issues for when it comes to enrolling these devices. This is something OEM should provide accurately, right? So if you're working with the OEM. Another thing to make sure that is in place for you is that you have the deployment profile set up correctly as well. Otherwise, you may have issues. So in previous videos, we had different profiles. I went ahead and proactively created another one. But just to make sure that you have the same settings, go to it and make sure you have out-of-box experience set accordingly. Again, it's user-driven. And here's a setting that we want to make sure it's enabled, and it says allow pre-provisioned deployment. Make sure that's set up to yes. Otherwise, you may have issues. And of course, everything else as it is in here goes to assignments as well. And make sure that all devices are set up so that way it can work, basically. All right, and here we are. Now we can log in as the user. We can now ship the computer. Let's say, you know, the OEM, in this case, Dell, just decides to ship the computer as it is. That's perfectly fine. And you can see that it didn't really save our Dell OEM settings, so the user doesn't even see this part of it. Although there will be a kind of a profile, a local profile with Dell OEM on it. But now user just can log in. Just to make it simple here, I will just go ahead and log in as Dell OEM. So it's going to be your email address for the user. And the password, of course. And there it goes. Now we're logging in as Dell OEM, but of course any user at this point can now log in because the device is already managed by Intune and by your corporation. All right. And of course there are more steps, and if user needs help, they can certainly, contact your help desk. And here's the part where we, we use our two-factor authentication that's set up for the user. So on their phone, they need to pull up their authenticator and, type in that number that's there, make sure that they verify that it's them. As after I've done this on my phone, I can now go in and set up a PIN, and you can, user can set this up. Again, in the previous video I showed you, you can create restrictions on when it comes to rules when using pins of how long it needs to be, stuff like that. So I will go ahead and just make up one here just to get things going. In this case, I set it up so it's a 4-pin. And let's go ahead and see. Now things should be immediately installing. Looks like Google Chrome is already installed, which is great. A lot of the stuff has been pre-installed as we saw during that setup. Here is Microsoft Office. All of this stuff is installed. Let's look at all of the apps. What else did we have? What is it, 7-zip that we've had going for that as well? It may be here or may not. Actually, there it is. All right, cool. So that's that. This device is now managed by Intune. If you look at the system properties, you can see the name of the device, all the other settings that you want to troubleshoot, and kind of let's look at other things here briefly. And some things may take a while to still install, but just to kind of give you an idea of what is going on, there is our Dell OEM profile, and you can see that it got created at 8:05 a.m. And if you see the timestamp here, it says 8:07 a.m. So if you log in, with a different user, it will have another login ID or local profile with their login ID there as well. And everything else should just work out the box. Let's say if they want to open up their Outlook, it's right here. It's going to open up immediately, and they just have to, select their email address. They're already authenticated with that two-factor authenticator, so this will just pop in and work. Same thing with, I don't know, let's say Word. Let's try Word. Here is Word that is installed on the computer, etc., etc., etc. And that completes our training class. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.